You're listening to The Awakening Woman Ready to Thrive. I'm your host, Florence Agpabi, and this is your space to return to your truth, your rhythm, your power. Let's begin. Okay, so welcome to another episode of The Awakening Woman Ready to Thrive. Today I am speaking to Marcy Neumann. Hi, Marcy. Thank you for being here and welcome.
Thank you so much, Florence. I'm so happy to be here with you.
Okay. So when we spoke last time, there was so much for us to potentially talk about. But before we get into that, if you could just take a moment to introduce yourself to the listeners.
Of course, my pleasure. So I've actually been an awakening woman for over 50 years. Back in the early 70s, the same year that I graduated from nursing school, I was ordained as a spiritualist minister. And so I was trained in hands-on healing, mediumship, trance mediumship, and what we now call energy medicine. And so, of course, 50 years ago, the topics that were, in the foremost of my mind and wanted to really start to teach were actually not as accepted as they are now. And I found myself in situations where I was the pioneer. And what happened was actually quite miraculous, and doors opened for me that were not opening for my friends or my colleagues. And I was very blessed in being very instrumental in creating programs to incorporate science and spirituality in conventional medical situations, hospital systems, hospice, doctor's offices, and I taught medical students. I worked with brain injured adults. There were just so many incredible opportunities that were offered to me. And so my entire career has been one of being a bridge or a liaison between the worlds of conventional medicine and healing and unconventional metaphysical healing. And so as I evolved through all of that, I shifted in my approach to working with women in particular. And about 25 years ago, I really came to the conclusion that our realignment with our authentic selves, our true selves, is really the most essential aspect of our lives that we must put all of our efforts into. And so, of course, it requires that we go into our heart. And this is how I became the Heart Shift Coach. So my work is the accumulation of over 50 years of experience in helping people to heal their hearts and in providing really leading edge programming so that we can come to that place of complete authenticity and cultivate the courage that it takes to create a self-love lifestyle. And so I do that in various ways, through my work one-on-one with clients, through groups that I run, through various podcasts that I've had. I now have a online television program. It's called Live with Marcy and Amy, the Heart-Centered Woman. And through local workshops and, of course, books and you name it, I've done it. And I'm here to talk about it. So let's dive in.
Wow, that sounds amazing, Marcy.
It has been amazing.
Yeah, I can clearly see that you have so much experience and wisdom. So I'm excited to have you here and to hear what you have to share with listeners today. So I guess what really speaks to me is your journey. Hearing you say words like you were a pioneer and you were a bridge between the conventional and the unconventional, and really hearing how, as in your own words, you said, the opportunities and the doors were opened for you to bring energy medicine into the scientific world, where maybe there would not have been this receptivity towards it before. Can you tell me a little bit more about how that has shaped your work?
Well, I think what happens is, when we put our heart in the forefront, we have this opportunity to, number one, journey within ourselves, right? So the heart is always leading us. Typically, I shouldn't say always, but it typically is leading us in a completely different direction than our head. Our head wants us to follow the crowd. Our head wants us to stay small, shrunken down, and stay safe. Your heart says, oh, this incredible life is here for you to experience. Follow me, follow me. And so it's always taking us out of our comfort zone. And I think what is so important for all of us to remember is that when we want to make a change in our lives, or even just to be a greater expression of who we really are, it's always going to be uncomfortable. Staying small, staying that shrunken version, following the crowd, getting all of our validation from outside of us is where we think we're safe, and we aren't. Because that inner spirit is constantly at work saying, remember your sacred mission. Remember why you're here. You have a purpose in that only you can express this love, this creative energy through you in the way that's needed right now. And so these opportunities come to us constantly, but most of the time we ignore them because, number one, we don't know where it will take us. Number two, we are afraid of being in that discomfort. And number three, we think that we already have to be something other than what we are in order to step into it. So this is a complete myth. It is a false belief. And I think this is what we are here to remember. When we're in the flow of source energy and we're just following that stream of consciousness and of love and energy, we don't have to worry about a thing. From my earlier years as a young adult and wife and mother, I did my very best, Florence, to follow that mold, okay, where I was following the path that I thought was required of me, that my value, my worth was really dependent on that and how good I did that. And I remember so much of my life, even though I loved, so many parts of being a wife and my children, it was such a wonderful time of my life. I also remember feeling this emptiness. I was not fulfilled. And the reason I wasn't fulfilled is because the parts of me that needed to expand and be this greater version of me had no place to go. How could I possibly be fulfilled? And so I remember, like searching here and there and trying to be this and trying to be that and look this way and talk that way and, just being something other than what I truly was. And I remember all of me, and this is my body, my mind, began to deteriorate. I could actually feel my spirit dying inside of me. And of course, it doesn't ever really, but I wasn't feeding it because I kept trying to push it down, push it down. Oh, don't speak too loud. Don't be too eccentric. Don't talk about those things, like past life regression, things like that when you're out in, this community. So I was a different person in different communities.
Mm.
And, I started to really recognize that if I was going to survive in this world, I needed to cultivate that courage that I spoke of earlier. I needed to be me. And the result of that was that I ended up having to leave my marriage and my home and my community and my friends and much of my family that was not going to allow this deviation of me being something other than what they wanted and needed me to be. There literally was like no room in those worlds for who I really was. And I remember that time just thinking, and bargaining with God. Do I have to do this? How, there has to be another way there, and there wasn't another way, because I was in a place where the authentic parts of me that were being called forward were not welcome.
Mm.
And of course, what I know now is that I had placed myself there. I had placed myself there so that I could become a stronger version of myself. And, once that gauntlet was thrown, it was almost as if I had no other choice. Of course, we always do. But I felt like I had no other choice because literally, like I said, I felt like my spirit was dying. But something so miraculous happened. And that was after about a year, after I had left my marriage, all of a sudden, all of these symptoms that I had just sort of swept under the rug, thinking, oh, they're just part of aging. Like I had this constant pain in my hips, I had digestive issues, constant headaches, and interestingly enough, I had these recurrent nightmares. And I would wake up in the middle of the night, my heart pounding, I'd break out into a sweat because I couldn't find my wedding ring.
Mm.
And about a year after I left, and I'm telling you, it was a very difficult time leaving. One day, I remember I was sitting at my desk and the doorbell rang and I jumped up to go answer the doorbell. And I stood there when I realized I had just jumped out of my chair. And I was stunned to think in that moment, I had not had a headache. I had not had digestive issues. My hips were in perfect shape. I could do anything. I was a runner. I could do anything without any pain whatsoever. And I had never had one of those nightmares again.
Mm.
And this is, we need to realize our heart, our higher self is constantly asking us to follow it because it's where we will find our happiness and our health and our purpose and be living the life that we came here to live and deserve to live.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing all of that. There's just so much there. Where do I even start from? So I think the thing that stands out to me is this idea that actually not choosing ourself, not choosing our expansion and our highest self has a cost. It has a cost emotionally, but it also has a cost physically. And I feel like there is so much conditioning that stops us from choosing ourselves. But we also, as a result of it, tend to burn out and experience autoimmune conditions much more frequently than, say, for example, men. My background is in psychology, and I remember when I was uh, teaching stress and health psychology, there was this idea that women are more likely to have a type C personality. I don't know whether you've heard of that, but yeah, so just for people who haven't, so we've probably heard of type A and type B. Type A's are really kind of stressy, perfectionistic, hardcore work driven, that kind of thing. And they tend to end up getting things like coronary heart disease and basically things to do with high blood pressure and conditions of the heart. Type B are the kind of like the laid back surfer kind of dudes that, just laissez-faire, just do what you want to do, follow the flow kind of thing. But type C, they tend to be women, like I said, who hold it all in, who serve other people, who sacrifice, who don't allow themselves to get angry, who don't express themselves. And this results in autoimmune conditions, or the C, which stood for cancer.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I will tell our audience that during that time of revelation, where I realized, and I will say, I actually, when I stopped and just had this realization, oh my God, I am healed of all of those afflictions. I asked my higher self, I asked, what did I do? How did this happen? I, had already been a vegetarian for many years, and, what did I do? And I heard so clearly, you started to love yourself in a way you never allowed it before.
I think self-love for a woman is such a courageous act. It's not simply saying, oh, I love myself, but love is a verb, right?
Yes.
It's actions. It's what we do. It's what we allow ourselves to do. It's what we allow ourselves to receive. It's how we show up for ourselves. So even just making those decisions where we say, actually, I'm going to prioritize me, myself, my needs, that's so radical and revolutionary in our society.
Absolutely. And yet, as you said, it is more essential for a woman to do this than a man. And the reason for that is that men more readily express themselves and follow their own drum, right? They have the freedom to create what it is that they want to experience in most cases, and are encouraged to do so. As women, it's the opposite. It is, and I remember having this conversation with my father, and he would say to me, if you do that, you'll never find a husband. I wanted to go to medical school. And he said, Marcy, look, you're really smart, but you might be better off going to nursing school so that you can, still work if you want to. But you'll be there taking care of your kids and your family and your husband. Well, guess what, Florence? I went to nursing school instead of medical school. At the same time, and this was interesting, at the same time, I had been admitted to the national choir. And we were supposed to be going around the United States performing in all of the big cities, and the trip would culminate at the White House and meet the president and all of that. And I remember when I got the letter that, I was admitted into this choir and the whole schedule and everything, and it would have required that I start nursing school a semester later. They overlapped. And I remember, again, my mother and my father saying that, my singing wasn't going to be a career, and that I needed to really consider starting nursing school with everybody else so that I would graduate with my class. And I gave up the opportunity to sing in the national choir. So this, giving up of self to appease others is something that's so deeply programmed within us, we don't even recognize it. And I think that that's what half of the issue is. We don't recognize when we're doing it because we have this belief that that's our role. And so I remember being in nursing school and actually wondering what I was doing there. As it turned out, Spirit knew that I needed to be there. And as I said, my role so much has been as a liaison between the worlds so that people can begin to understand their own expansive selves and ability to heal. But you were talking about, self-love and the courage that it takes. And it's not just saying, oh, I love myself. And again, that comes from people confusing self-care and self-love. So I would love to just differentiate this for people for a moment.
Sure, yeah.
So when people often talk about self-love, what they're really talking about is self-care. These are the things that we do that soothe us and comfort us. We go for a massage, we go for a pedicure, we have lunch with friends, we take a bath, we, even if we're wearing a hat when it's cold outside or carrying an umbrella, those are all things that are considered self-care. And again, it soothes and comforts us. Self-love takes you out of your comfort zone. There is nothing comfortable about stepping outside of the programming and the conditioning of our societies and our families or our cultures or our religions. That is very uncomfortable, and you were spot on. It takes such courage. And this is where we have to decide, are we going to love ourselves enough to step over that threshold, even though we don't know what it's going to look like or sound like or feel like? Because we've, rarely been there before. This is where we step into this knowingness that the universe will love and support us in every possible way because it's been trying to get us there since day one.
Oh my goodness. Just you're talking and I'm just like, I'm just feeling everything that you're saying, and there's just so much resonance. So you mentioned courage, and you mentioned the difference between self-care and self-love. I actually want to bring in Audre Lorde because she spoke about radical self-care, and she was writing from the perspective of particularly being a Black female in the United States, and why it was a revolutionary act of reclamation and self-love against a system that says, no, you can't put yourself first. So, that kind of ties in to what you're saying as well. Because if I use my example as my background in teaching, I think I've mentioned it to you previously, that I burnt out in teaching. I was in my late 20s at the time. I went into teaching. Probably there was some vulnerability. No, not probably. Definitely there was some vulnerability in my body anyway, because of the way that I was raised, the conditioning, the narratives, the socialization, everything that you've already mentioned meant that I had always been choosing self-sacrifice and self-abandonment over self-love and self-care. So I entered into teaching, which is one of those professions like nursing, where, as a woman, it's kind of, there's an expectation that you just give yourself over to the quote unquote vocation because you're there to heal or you're there for the kids and forget about yourself. So I burnt out and I developed a rare autoimmune condition. And what one of the things I realize now, looking back, is I didn't take those actions of radical self-care. I wasn't aware of just how much I wasn't loving myself. And even if I had just been just maybe 10% more aware, hopefully a lot more aware, but even just a little bit, it shifts things. It really changes things. But what we're seeing at the moment is that women are burning out. And then once they burn out, they're like, oh my gosh, I burnt out. But this is not an overnight thing that has happened. This is like decision after decision, choice after choice of self-abandonment.
That's right.
Self-sacrifice. Yeah.
That's right. So in essence, we must take responsibility for this. But it also means that we are accountable. We are accountable to how we are living our lives. And there has to be that moment where we choose ourselves. And the one thing I know that's so confusing to a lot of women is, well, how can I do that? I love them so much. It has nothing to do with loving another. We still love them. Our love for them doesn't change. What changes is how we love ourselves. So this does not in any way take away from our love that we have for others. But here's the issue. We're so ingrained to believe that we have to prove that love over and over and over again, that we don't dare to stray outside of what someone else interprets our love as. So in other words, we're like these mutants, right? We constantly are shape-shifting to make certain that these people in our lives believe that we love them. Well, what we need to do is to give them the opportunity to actually experience love as it really is. And love as it really is this extension of self, right? We are extending ourselves as love, but it's energetic, and there's nothing that you need to do to earn my love. So when we give that belief up, that we somehow have to be a certain way so that we are earning somebody else's love, we now give them permission to be themselves, and they don't need to earn our love.
I see this as being super important in motherhood and raising a child, because those beliefs, they get passed down. And I just think about my daughter. When I say I love her, when I used to say it to her, she would say to me, oh, mummy, why do you love me? She wanted me to tell her specific reasons why I loved her. And I just said to her, I love you. I love you because you make my heart happy. I'm so happy that you're here, just things like that. And I would say those things. I'd be careful about what I was saying, because I never wanted her to feel that she needed to earn my love. I always wanted her to know that no matter what she did or who she was or who she became in life, my love for her would never change. And so she doesn't ask me that question anymore. She knows, and she's only 4. She knows that mummy loves her, and she's my sun and moon and stars and universe. So I do understand what you mean, but it's something that often we grow up having been taught, even if it's not explicitly taught. There is this expectation that love is earned through doing well at school or whatever things were important to our parents as we grew up.
And all I can say is this. If that is something that we really need to embrace, in other words, if we need to strengthen our ability to love unconditionally, you can bet that the universe will bring those experiences and opportunities. And this is where we start to learn that we are actually in partnership with this energy, right? We can call it love, we can call it God, we can call it whatever that is, that creative life force. It's here. We have this covenant that when we come into the knowingness that we are here to be the greatest expression of that and to create from the highest frequencies that we can tap into, because it benefits not just us and not just those that we love, but it benefits all people everywhere, we start to recognize that there's no reason at any time for us to doubt that we are loved and that we have this capacity to love beyond measure. And I think that that's what the blessings of parenthood is really all about, because I have 4 kids and they're all adults now. And you think it's, a challenge to, raise your young child and for them to know that you love them unconditionally. But as our children become adults, it takes it to a whole other level, because you have to, within yourself, become a sovereign being so that you can extend that and see your children as sovereign beings. And again, it's where the message becomes so important that they don't need to earn your love. They have the right to live their lives according to their own journeys. What we don't know what that soul needs in order to expand and grow. And as a parent, I think when we come right into the essence of what our job is, it is to become so connected with this level of unconditional love that we recognize that that is the love that is within us. And then suddenly everybody has permission to live and to follow their hearts. And we have the opportunity to celebrate that in each other. It's a whole different ball game.
I'm definitely hearing that, Marcy. So what you're saying is that it starts with us. If we're going to be able to generate, transmit, be that kind of love, we need to feel it for ourselves. That's right. And I want to go back to the courage bit, because you've spoken about that so much, and I feel like there's something more there, because courage is, it's corazon, it's of the heart, strengthening the heart. Take courage. And so I want to talk more about your understanding of courage and its connection to the heart as well.
Yeah. So let's first distinguish the difference between bravery and courage. Bravery is an energy that is more of a short-term energy that we use. We've just got to be brave and go to the dentist. We have to be brave and, learn how to drive a car. In other words, it's an energy that we draw upon for a momentary need to propel us forward. Courage, on the other hand, is an energy that is a segue into freedom. And so we can't lose sight of it for a moment. Courage is the energy that carries us from that self-care into self-love. It's a long-term relationship that needs to be built on this self-love journey. So courage is actually a relationship. It's a relationship with an energy that requires that we align with it. It becomes a way of life. It is not a momentary need. Courage is called upon in many ways. It manifests in many ways, but it is part of the journey. It's not a one-night stand.
So if there are people who are struggling, if somebody's listening and struggling with courage, maybe they know they're at the precipice and they know, they resonate with everything that's been said. It's like, you're speaking to me already. I get it. I just can't X, Y, Z. I can't move forward. I just can't. What would you say to them?
Yeah. Actually, I have a promise for them. I have a promise that if you will allow yourself to get comfortable with saying, what if? The universe will supply all those answers. So when I think about the what if, I sort of see myself at a doorway. And I know that there have been a number of things that have brought me to that doorway. And yet I also know that what is beyond that is the reward of that. It's everything that is waiting for me. And yet I'm having trouble stepping over that threshold. Here's what I want everyone to know. Like bravery, standing at that threshold, it's also going to require you to trust that this is true. But like bravery, it's a momentary necessity. Because once you step over, I promise you, the universe will lay itself at your feet. And it will start to bring to you everything that it has been holding in escrow for you. And it will be relentless. It'll be like that little puppy that greets you at the door and can't wait to make you happy. Can't wait to deliver your paper, your slippers, if it could, deliver a drink to you, it would. Anything that it can do to make you happy and to, snuggle up to your heart and share the heartbeat of your joy, it will do.
I love that. I was speaking to somebody yesterday, and she said, if we're not here to be happy, what are we here for? If we believe that our reason for being here is to just follow the map, get a career, have a job, get married, have a family, work, earn enough money to be comfortable, retire. And none of that brings you any joy, any true happiness, it just doesn't make sense. If we think about it from a cosmic, universal perspective,
that's right.
It doesn't actually make sense. If the purpose of our being here isn't to be happy, and I would add there's more. I wouldn't just say it's happiness, but to learn, to grow, to evolve, to become. I would add all of those things in. But those are dynamic. There's a quality there that is intuitive, that flows with the course of life and not against it. But if you have like this ready-made map that you go, okay, here's step 1 and step 2 and step 3, and there's no life in that, surely that's a place of no life can't be the point of life.
It's actually dysfunctional. It's absolutely 100% dysfunctional. We, in order to live that life, we have to cut ourselves off from the essence of our being. We have to cut ourselves off from our higher self that's constantly saying, hey, follow me, let's go do this, let's try that, let's paint it this color, let's, because those aspects of self are in flow and need to be in flow with the energy of creation. When you have succumbed to that, as you said, that step-by-step roadmap, you have to cut yourself off from creative life force energy. It would never manifest in that way. All it wants, creative life force energy, its nature is to create. Its nature is to expand. Its nature is to explore. Its nature is to be curious. Oh, what if I do that? What if I do this? What if I go there? What if I speak to her, speak to him? In other words, it's based on energy flowing in any direction because its purpose is to expand. When you're in that facade of a life, you are stepping this point to that point to this point to that point. It is the antithesis of your true nature. It's why you will never, ever reach fulfillment. You will never feel connected to the world because you are unable to both give and receive in that place because you're so intent on going literally from one step to the next that you don't dare to step outside of it. So you can't ever reach that fulfillment and joy and abundance and prosperity. And from my perspective, the most important is that you'll never experience the freedom that is your true essence. You are free because you are the creative life force energy. So rather than contain it, we have to set it free. We have to allow it to lead us, and it will lead us to that joy, that peace, that fulfillment, and that abundance and prosperity. It will lead us because that expression is so passionate. And one thing we know is that, passion and purpose, they go hand in hand, and they promise prosperity. It's the courage to let the outside world remain on the outside and for us to focus on the inside world so that then the outside world that we are creating is one that is a reflection of our heart, of our true self.
Okay, so just to round up, if you can share 3 key takeaways, 3 key things that you'd like our listeners to know before we sign off for today.
Okay. The first is that your sole purpose here is to become the greatest, most expansive expression of you, the true you. Your job actually is to let go of all the constraints, of all of the restrictions, of all of the programming and conditioning that would tell you that you'll never be enough to be you. Know that as you do that, and yes, it will be scary, but this energy of courage is actually your higher self that is supplying you with the evidence and support that you need to stay true to your mission. Your mission is to be you. There was a study recently where they measured the frequency of different energies. And of course, everybody talked about love being the most powerful energy. And it wasn't. Love was number 2. What was number 1 was authenticity. And the reason that authenticity is the most powerful energy in the world is that when you are authentic, you are aligned with your own divinity. You are aligned with your divine self, which is the creator. You are here to create, to utilize the energy of love to create. But you only are able to access those higher frequencies when you are aligned with your own godliness. And so work to be authentic. And I think number 3 is to allow yourself, whatever is that temporary necessity, allow yourself to be brave, allow yourself to trust, allow yourself to just have faith, allow yourself to hope. But just know it's temporary. Don't stay there. Step over the threshold so that you can finally experience the wholeness, the incredible expansiveness of who you really are. Because the universe will lay itself at your feet to show you.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. And I'm aware of time. Otherwise, I'd love to talk more, but we do have to bring this conversation to an end. So
yes, we
if you could let us know, if you could let us know where we can find you, and if you do have a free gift or freebie, where can we find that? Yes. What is it and where can we find it?
Sure. Well, you can find me and my free gift all in the same space. So you can contact me and find out all about my programs at marcyneumann.com, marcyneumann.com. And you can get my free gift, which is an ebook that I've written, how to shift from self-sabotage to self-love in 5 days. And it's like a primer because we have to be aware of when we're in the energy of self-sabotage as opposed to the energy of self-love. And then, of course, also I want to invite everyone to go to selfloveuniversity.com. And there I have loads of programs to help you on your journey.
Okay. Thank you so much, Marcy. That all sounds amazing. And thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your journey with us today. I'm sure that everyone listening to it also appreciates your time as well.
Such a joy and honor for me. Thank you so much for having me. Many blessings to everyone.
You've been listening to The Awakening Woman Ready to Thrive. If you've enjoyed this episode, I'd love for you to take part in our special launch giveaway. You could win a spot in either the Awakening Path or Create Chicks Rising, and everyone who enters will receive a beautiful thank you bundle featuring resources and gifts from incredible women across my community. Entering is simple, and all the details are in the show notes. And if you'd like to contribute a resource to the thank you bundle or support the podcast in another way, just reach out. I'd love to hear from you. Most of all, thank you for being here, and I will see you in the next episode.